Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed. I'm Jeff Pallet, and thanks for being with us. We've got 2 episodes for you today. You'll hear my interviews with 2 elected officials for the very first time in the show to help us launch Ballotpedia's artificial intelligence deepfake legislation tracker. This new one-of-a-kind tracker, officially our 3rd by the way, will provide insight into the current status of legislation addressing deepfake technology in state legislatures across the country, surveying historical trends in this policy area. Both of the legislators we had on the show, one Democratic and one Republican legislator, have sponsored bills on deepfakes, and we thought inviting them on would be a great way to provide some more insight to not only what is being discussed with this legislation, but on how the different states and different parties are thinking about addressing this really new and emerging area of politics related to artificial intelligence innovations and challenges. Let's quickly get caught up. What are deepfakes exactly anyway, you may be wondering. So deepfakes we define as videos, images, or audio files that have been generated or manipulated by artificial intelligence in order to realistically portray something that did not actually occur. That's a pretty technical definition, but you can imagine what it really looks like then. And as this technology has emerged, public policy organizations, lawmakers, and journalists have expressed concerns related to the use of deepfake technology, whether we're talking about the proliferation of child sexual abuse material and other non-consensual sexual content, or the distribution of deceptive political communications and election disinformation or property rights infringement, harassment, fraud, and threats to national security even. The list of use cases goes on and on. This is a really emerging area. We've seen 4 times as many bills enacted this year than in the prior 4 years combined. So far, 480 bills have been introduced in just the first 6.5 months of this year alone. So as the technology advances, lawmakers and advocates are having to think through, how does our government want to govern and regulate deepfakes? This is a really interesting new emerging policy area, and we're excited to delve into it. 2 legislators on this show today. And we hope listeners out there will make use of our new AI deepfake legislation tracker at ballotpedia.org. Now let's get to the show. In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Tony Hasenbeck, a Republican member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, representing District 65. Representative Hasenbeck has sponsored several bills related to artificial intelligence, one of which being Oklahoma HB 3642, which updated the state's laws on obscenity and child pornography, broadening what might be considered to be unlawful. If you like this episode and don't want to miss out on conversations like this one, make sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And now, here's my conversation with Representative Hasenbeck. All right. Representative Hasenbeck, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, so like I said before, we are launching a new legislation tracker at Ballotpedia on deepfake legislation. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you got interested in crafting deepfake legislation. Tell me a little bit about the bills that you have sponsored in Oklahoma.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. I guess 2 summers ago, we started doing some work about looking at revenge pornography. We now call it non-consensual dissemination of graphic images. That's the courtroom terms that we say. And I did some interim studies, had experts come in. I had sex crimes investigators come and talk to us. Last summer, we kind of repeated that. I had this really good bill, and we had a lot of problems in the first half of the 59th session in the state of Oklahoma. A lot of really good legislation didn't make it through both chambers because there was just a lot of fighting. And this last session, I decided to ask the pro tem of the Senate, Greg Treat, to be my bill author on the bills that really, really matter to me. And then we did dual bills. So I had one and he had one. And we both agreed if these bills have to be House bills in order to get them passed, that's fine. If they have to be Senate bills, that's fine. Whatever we had to do to get this legislation passed. And one of them actually ended up, I was in a fight with the floor leader of my chamber, and I went and asked him. He said, I'll push it through tomorrow. We'll get it done. And so that's the first time I've ever really had to fight with my own chamber to get some stuff done. But there were a lot of, we'll uncover all this. There were a lot of extenuating reasons, which are even more disgusting. But basically, I was a school teacher for 19 years, and we've just left some places in our law that we were leaving children unprotected, and learning about artificial intelligence and all the different ways that predators use children to make money. I think was really it's just one of those discoveries you make that you don't sleep at night. And then you learn when because you know that, then you have to have experts talk about pedophiles who look at children and just that the whole deviant behavior, their brain gets full of that. And so the brain chemistry tells them to want more. So then they want to look younger and younger and younger children until now we have markets for infantile pornography. So whatever we can do to try to put people in jail who are trying to do stuff like that, I don't know what greater purpose I might have in the legislature than doing stuff like that.
Yeah. And we've seen, I mean, there's been a really big increase in the amount of deepfake legislation over the last few years. So from 2019 through 2022, there were single-digit bills enacted nationally related to the space. And then 2023, there were 12 bills. And just this year so far alone, there have been 45. So I'm kind of curious, as you started to get into this space, were you able to find resources that were available to you from other states? Was this something where you think there's been a little bit of a national push? Or is it something where you kind of had to cobble together bills in your own state off of what you had seen?
Well, I sort of have I have an example of all three of those in the bills that we got passed. The actual, what we call the deepfake 3642 deepfake bill. I called that one my child pornography bill, because we had several things with that. We created some language to make sure that we could protect children for AI as it exists now and as it may potentially come to fruition in the future. So how will it change? Can we be ready? Can we have books? Can we have law on the books to protect kids against that change? Then another thing that we did is I worked really closely with the Attorney General's office, because we have a really good Attorney General in the state of Oklahoma. And he has put together this amazing staff. And one of his staff attorneys was a former prosecutor who would have to go into courtrooms and find that place where once we challenge somebody, a predator challenges to an upper court, the language that we had in Oklahoma didn't closely follow federal language in order to make the next jump. So in that bill, we also changed our child pornography laws to make them stronger, not only to meet the demands of what is actually happening, but also to match the federal language, so that when we get a case, we have a family that's willing to go forward, we can actually make those charges stick a little better. So that bill, I had a great deal of help from the Attorney General's office. They actually came to my interim studies, and we just started working on language actually in the interim study. And so that was a really easy thing to do. Because sometimes there, as you know, there are all kinds of attorneys, and our House staff, I don't know that there's a greater set of people working together for a good cause anywhere. And then the Attorney General has put together such a staff. And so we had all these people working towards the same direction. And I'm really really proud of that piece of legislation. So that one, that was like a homegrown product that I had lots of help with. Mm-hmm. I have another bill to put predators away who are extorting children. It's typically Snapchats. I hate giving them this much credit, but it's the Snapchat predator is what we call them, because Snapchat's set up so privately, and a lot of parents don't know what their kids are doing on Snapchat. And it's common. It's very common in our society for a kid to be in their bedroom with their phone. And then they get up and they can go to the bathroom and shut the door. Even if you have an open door policy in your kids' bedrooms, it's not uncommon for them to get up and leave. Whereas when I was a kid, there would be like a dozen little fourth grade boys who found a Playboy magazine in the ditch, and they'd be running around. And pretty soon some mom would look out the window and see a dozen boys all grouped in a circle, knowing they're not praying. And then the mom, the moms would make phone calls, and you could kind of get around stuff like that. And now these kids have these devices in their hands. And so I can't even remember the bill number on that. It's my non-consensual dissemination of sexually graphic images bill. And that one is one that I kind of pieced it together on my own. Then we had an interim study about it. Then we got the bill passed out of the House. And that's the one that I also went and grabbed the pro tem to help me get that passed, because I passed it off the House floor twice, 97 to nothing. And then I couldn't get it heard again in the end of the session. That one, the Motion Picture Association had tried to foil passage of that bill for some really, what I think are just odd reasons. And I kind of feel like they got my bill confused. I had 3 bills that all were about the same subject matter. And so I think they might have put them all together and confused them or something. And so that was really difficult. Then I had an age verification for pornography bill that has been tried in other states. And I had daily conversations with bill writers from other states about making sure that we get this passed, and it's something that we can, that one was so the Attorney General can go after a company, but also an individual family can go after. So hopefully we'll get some of that stopped. So I got to do all 3 of those things.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's just a lot of legislative activity, as you're sort of alluding to. What do you think the future of deepfake legislation looks like in terms of there's political communications and the deepfakes around ads, and can campaigns use deepfakes? What does it look like? What does disclosure look like? What does enforcement look like? And then there's, of course, deepfakes with respect to a lot of what you were just talking about, pornographic materials, non-CSAN. Do you see those 2 issues being separate? Do you see them being combined together? What do you see as someone who's worked in this space as being the future of deepfake legislation?
Well, I guess, to be honest, I hope the deepfakes of politics and the deepfakes of folks who don't put themselves in politics, I hope that stays separate. I'm someone who has been running for office for 10 years. I think I've won 4 Republican primaries. I've had some pretty hideous stuff go out about me. But at the same time, as much as I hate to say that kind of thing you do expect when you run for office. Now, because I'm a public official, I would never expect it to be okay for someone to, like happens with children, for someone to make a sex tape and put my face on it. That would be, and I don't think, even if you are a movie star, even if you are an elected official, if you're a president, I think there should be some, if you're using someone's image to commit a felony, I think it should all be different. But if you're just, putting, Donald Trump's face on I don't know how I'd feel about somebody putting Donald Trump's face on my body. But, I think there's a certain amount of satire that comes with political advertisement, and you have to have thick enough skin to understand that kind of stuff is politics. But when you start, delving into things that are not protected by the Constitution, then I think you need to be expected to pay for it.
There's an old story about Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the different various deepfake imagery that they used at the time, limited by the technology that they have, of course, but it's not new to our political system in that respect.
No, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I talk. If I had a time machine, I would go back in time and I would show up on the front porch of Monticello with Thomas Jefferson's mincemeat pie and All the history books would be different. But
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
studied him a lot, and it's like, if you're going to be in
Mhm.
politics, you should expect this. But the other stuff, I think at least in Oklahoma, I think we have I think we'll have that managed.
Yeah. Have you found that the bipartisan nature of this issue splits in any way? Is it pretty consistent? You said one of your bills is 97-0. Well, what does that look like either in Oklahoma or just nationally? How have you seen this deepfake issue play out?
Well, I think enough parents have opened up their children's phones and had a bad interface with the internet and this type of thing. I know my very first time I ever got on the World Wide Web, I don't even remember what I typed in, but I was trying to get to the marthastewart.com because she was my favorite. And their website rolled up the screen and then rolled down the screen were nude images. And that was probably 25 years ago. And so that was my very first experience with the World Wide Web. I used to be a school librarian, a library media specialist. So I did a lot of studying of the First Amendment and your right to privacy and your right to look at things, but what things can you look at? So that was another layer of this. For me, it's just some things are wrong, some things are protected, even though you might think they are wrong. You can't keep adults from looking at stuff like that. So I think that part is really easy. Doesn't matter. It's not really a political issue at all. It's like a safety issue. Then in Oklahoma, Republicans have a supermajority in both the House and the Senate. And so I'm one of the folks in the House that runs a lot of partisan bills. So anytime I bring up a bill at all, I sometimes get hammered on it extra by the minority. But I fully understand the role of the minority is to slow us down. And I'm always prepared for um, a lot of questioning when I bring a bill to the House floor. So, but in the end, they typically will vote for things that have to do with doing what's best for the safety of our citizens.
Mm. Gotcha. And what do you see with the future in the next couple of sessions for this topic area? Obviously, sessions and states have various different calendars and timelines. And some states were in session this year and won't be next year, and vice versa. But where do you see this going? I mean, obviously, deep fakes and AI, it's just really scratching the surface and just starting out. How do you see states evolving with what they're doing on this issue?
Well, I would like to think that there's probably an educator in every legislature in the country, and as teachers, you have to deal with a lot of things,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, kids having pornography in their hands at school is not an uncommon issue, and so hopefully, there's enough people that understand. Um, Hey, we need to get ahead of this because there are kids dying. A child gets talked into sending an image and then it gets sent to their friends, and 14, 11, 12, 14-year-old children their little brains are different. They grew up with iPads in their hands. Their brain chemistry is not the same as kids' brain chemistry whose mom kicked them outside. And if you get thirsty, there's a water hose in the front yard. Um,
Yeah.
our brain chemistry is a little bit different now. And I've noticed that myself, like I always have to have that phone in my hand. I'm always checking on stuff. And then I realized like, you got to go plug this in and go outside. And so I do think that there's kind of an upswelling of that. I know about 5 years ago, some of the first Apple app creators maybe not app creators, the guys that worked in Apple who were perfecting apps to put them in the hands of users, they started having children and they realized that, whoa, this is not what's supposed to be happening with the child. We should never let our kids have an iPhone in their hands when they're developing and their brain is developing. And so I think apps have changed a little bit, but a lot of people, if you're not working on that science side of the brain, um, you're not realizing what's happening to your kids. And it's probably happening to you as an adult as well.
Yeah, just to sort of clarify for our listeners, I think one of the things that you're getting at is um, the concept of pornography is not new in our society,
Right.
but what deepfakes do differently is they allow pornography to be distributed more easily to minors because they can create pornography in a much different way. Can you expand a little more on why deepfakes actually increase the ease of pornographic material distribution?
Well, it kind of goes back to how kids get introduced. And we have a problem in our society with, just like I mentioned before, it's normal for the kids to go in their rooms and be by themselves and have their phones. And so if somebody gets a hold of them and sends them imagery, then they get desensitized and they think this is okay, this is normal. And then they have no idea where it comes from. It could be a real image, it could be a created image, but what the downfall of that is somebody can create an image with that child's picture and now it gets sent out and it looks like it's that child involved in the pornographic act. And so that's a huge problem. That's what the original bill, the one reason that you invited me here today, that's what that bill really helps to stop. And so I honestly I can see this being kind of limitless, which is really frightening. And so I hope that there are folks in other states that really want to take a deep look at that. I even some of the groups and I get confused about who I fought on what bill because I had Meta attorneys in my office. I had I think Twitter is the only group that didn't send people to my office, but all of the internet service providers. Um, and it's like, no, this doesn't affect your bill. You can't determine what your people download. All you're doing is giving them internet access. So we're not worried about anything. You're held harmless for anything that your clients do because it's not how we regulate the internet. And so, but one of the issues was, well, what if someone wanted to create a documentary and where a child was being abused and we wanted to create an AI face and body? And I said, well, if you're depicting a child being abused, that's obscenity according to the Constitution. So that would be illegal in the state of Oklahoma as well as all the other states in the union. So I think there's just a lot of these issues that people think it's okay if it's AI. And it is not okay if it's AI. And especially if you're the one whose image they're using to create that AI. If they're making it look like that's you and your skin, it's just the same as if it were your skin because the average consumer would not be able to tell the difference.
Well, it's certainly not going to be an issue that goes away anytime
I don't think
soon.
so. And it's not any
And
fun to talk about. And
yeah,
if like I would rather, I mean, I kept threatening all of my colleagues that I'm just gonna make a bill that says the state breakfast is pancakes and bacon. Like I just, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
that'd be
Yeah,
delicious.
we can have
Yeah,
taste.
that's my kids' kind of
Yeah,
breakfast every morning.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I mean, I've dealt with those kinds of issues in my home and in my classroom, and so we just have to talk to our kids.
yeah. One more question, which is, this isn't the first time that new technology has come about and sort of caused our government, our leaders to question, okay, what do we do now with this? So, when the internet came out, people probably asked questions like, well, how do we regulate this thing, this new technology, this new device at our disposal? And when cell phones came out, same kind of thing. What, if anything, can you take from those prior experiences from governments, from legislators, from politicians, and from leaders that might help inform how we're going to societally approach deepfakes going forward?
Uh, um, I think that we've got to stay current and understand what's going on out there. I think we have to listen to our constituents. We have to be aware. If someone brings a problem to you, I mean, I had over 100 families come to me over the predation videos. And after about the first 60, then I started trying to write legislation to fix that. And then, so I think listening to people when they tell you something's a problem. Then, and another layer to this is really not what you asked, but I think it's important to understand. For 4 years, I've been working on some domestic violence legislation. In Oklahoma, if you're a woman, this is the number one state to be killed by a man if you are a woman. It's a weird statistic, but it's kind of wild. And in the state of Oklahoma, we have all of these gun laws that say you can shoot anybody you want practically if they're trying to harm you or hurt you. Problem is, if you shoot your domestic partner inside your home and you're a woman, you're very likely you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. So you can protect yourself, except if you're protecting yourself against your intimate partner, who's just probably a man. So that's one of the layers. And what we've learned is in domestic violence, videos of rape, torture, and sex are used against women as a coercion method to keep them quiet and to make them stay. So all of this stuff kind of goes together. And I think the more people understand, like we've been having these conversations in Oklahoma for 4 years. And so I have all kinds of people saying, what can we do to make this stop? When people hear that this happens, it is absolutely common sense. We have to stop this. If we can't stop it, we need to make sure if we catch somebody that they're going to go to jail for a long, long time. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is for people to just understand what's going on and understand who's committing these crimes. And we also put a click in that bill, like if it's a 17-year-old child who shares an image with his buddies one time, a judge will have the discretion to not make him a sexual predator. So that kind of stuff has to be built in the law too. We have to look at every single case and not paint them with the same brush as a 65-year-old man pretending to be a 14-year-old child who's done this 20 times a day for the last 5 years. So I guess that's how we need to regulate it. Be aware and be judicial with the regulation.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today, Representative Hasenbeck. Thank you for coming on the show, and listeners can follow along with Deepfake Legislation with our legislation tracker on ballotpedia.org. And thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. Maybe next time we can talk about something more fun.
Like parenting styles, right? That would be fun. Thanks for listening to that episode with Representative Tony Hasenbeck. In case you missed part 1, I interviewed Senator Joe Nguyen from Washington State Senate, talking about what legislative activity around deepfakes has been taking place in Washington. You can find that episode in your feed.